about Ukraine. I went there before the last president that Russia supported, called Viktor Yanukovych, was overturned in 2014 by a United States orchestrated coup that put a guy in, another crook called Poroshenko. And that coup was overseen for the United States by a lady called Victoria Nuland, an official from the State Department, who is the wife of Robert Kagan, an infamous neocon in the United States, who was an architect of the invasion of Iraq based on a lie. And Victoria Nuland is now back in the State Department under another regime at the time this is happening in Ukraine. Just a coincidence? No, it's not. And so what is the big picture in all this? Well, I've been saying for such a long time, you can see videos of it, that part of this cult unfolding plan for total global control is to orchestrate a conflict between the West and an alliance between Russia and China. And you'll note that the country not condemning Russia, refusing to get involved in sanctions against Russia, is China. And there's no way that Putin would have invaded Ukraine without confirmation that China would watch his back. It's coming out now, make of it what you will, that China asked for assurances that Putin would not invade Ukraine until after the Winter Olympics in China, not to spoil their event. So Putin obviously knew that this wave of economic response and other response, some of which is ridiculous, by the way. I hear the BBC are not going to let Russia have their programs any longer. God, I bet that makes Putin surrender overnight. And this economic response, of course Putin knew that was coming, but he knew that China was watching his back. And again, it's dot connecting. Look at what has happened. Not what is happening alone, but what has happened. The idea is to dismantle Western society. Predominantly America, which is the strongest country in Western society, although rapidly falling apart. So when Biden came in to the White House little more than a year ago, America was independent in terms of energy. This very short time later, after Biden, controlled by the cult, has been shutting down pipelines and stopping investment in looking for more carbon resources under the guise of human-caused climate change, a cult hoax, America is no longer independent of energy. And one of the countries it's dependent on for that energy, Russia, as is Europe in terms of natural gas. So why would you orchestrate a situation in which that country and that president that you're constantly condemning year after year, you orchestrated a situation where you are dependent upon that country and that president for energy supplies. So we now have a situation where energy prices are going through the frickin' roof on the way to the stratosphere because of COVID. Next stage, now even more so, or added on to, because of this war and the sanctions and all that stuff. We have a situation, therefore, that as energy prices go up, everything else goes up, which requires energy to be produced and to be transported. You have massive supply implications of things like wheat from a combination of Russia and Ukraine. A massive amount of the fertilizer that's used on the farms around the world, not least in America, comes out of Russia. So what you've been doing is systematically creating dependency on a country and a president that you've been condemning constantly over and over. Why would you do that? Because the cult that owns you wants you to do that. So, why have they been moving production out of the United States and other parts of the world too, Europe, to China? They talk about China being the major competitor in the world, the other possible superpower. But you move all your production to China, or massive amounts of it, losing all those jobs in America for Americans and Europeans, while handing control of your supply of goods to China. And therefore, handing control of the supply chain to China. And while you, because of the COVID and the, especially in this case, the human-caused global warming hoax of the cult, you've been reducing your access to independent energy supplies and destroying your ability to produce energy on the scale that you need it. Meanwhile, Russia and China couldn't give a damn about climate change because they know it's a hoax. So what are they doing? They've got independent supplies between them of energy, far, far lower costs to the West now. And China's building coal-fired power stations. Have you noticed how the global warming Greens, controlled by the cult, though most of them are too bewildered to know, they condemn the West for using carbon fuels, but they never mention, almost never mention China. That would give them the finger anyway. So the aces have been moved eastward to China and Russia, and then this war happens. And what it's doing and what the sanctions, etc., are going to do, not only going to massively affect the economies and the lives of the Western people, but they're going to drive Russia and China closer together in alliance. And if Russia and China joined in military alliance, and that's what they're doing more and more, then all the best in trying to stop that. In what I've been saying for decades is a cult plan in this script, which is to bring that conflict into being.
Jetzt ist ja die bekannte